right, cool. All right, well, let's get rolling, everybody. You know what it's time for? It's time for a little booktube action. Let's relax for a Friday night and settle in for a good story, something that I think you'll find a lot of fun and something that we can share for the booktube audience here on Fiction Friday. Let's discuss a very well-known writer, but we're not going to go into a lot of details. That's Wordsmith Wednesday, even on Thursdays. Created a very famous character, and we're going to read one of his mystery stories tonight. Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. Yeah. Outer Limits. Cool stuff. By the way, there are some anthologies that have taken some of the original Outer Limits scripts and turned them into short stories. So you'll find some of those out there. Diane Duane, who recently passed away, wrote a lot of Star Trek novels and stuff like that. She has some of the stories. Harlan Ellison has, of course, he wrote for Outer Limits. And in fact, one of his Outer Limits stories was sort of the inspiration for Terminator. And when Terminator originally got released, they didn't credit him. And so in the end, through some legal discussions, they ended up giving him some credit. And I don't know whether they gave him some money as well. But very interesting stuff if you're into the lore of Harlan Ellison. And, of course, there was a bookshop in Boston on Newbury Street where Newbury Comics started, and not too far from Fenway Park and the Prudential Building and things like that, called Avenue Victor Hugo. And Avenue Victor Hugo was where Harlan Ellison, who's one of his claims to fame, of his many, was that he wrote a short story every day, one short story every day. And so somebody said, oh, yeah, I bet you can't write a short story right now. So he sat in the window of the Avenue Victor Hugo bookstore, and the window faced south on an east-west running street, Newbury Street, and wrote a short story. And I think somebody took a picture of him doing that. And well, Avenue Victor Hugo bookstore is still going. If you're ever interested, they're not on Newbury Street anymore, their original location. They moved out of Newbury Street, and they're in New Hampshire, in Bow, New Hampshire. B-O-W, no, not Bow. No. Is it Bow? It might be Bow. They're in New Hampshire. And the owner is a libertarian. And I saw a picture of him. I'm like, hey, I know those guys. They're involved with the early libertarian movement. He goes, oh, yeah, they were there when I opened the store. I was like, I didn't know you were a libertarian. All those years I was going to your store when I was at BU. And so it was pretty fun. It's pretty cool. So let's get into some good stuff on fiction right now, talking bookstores, all these cool things, and mention that I brought up a writer tonight specifically because Sunday night I was able to see one of my favorite bands. Last time I tried to see them, I saw the last 30 seconds of their last song, because what usually takes me an hour to get into Boston took 3 hours, because they were playing at a club right across the street from Fenway Park, and inside Fenway Park, Pearl Jam was playing. So the traffic was crazy. I got there. These guys were opening up for Clutch, and so I heard the song that is often their last song. It's called Saturn III, like the movie with Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett. And, well, I knew that was the last song. And I got in there. I saw the last, 30 seconds of it. I was like, oh, and I got it a little bit. I went over to the T-shirt guy, and I said, oh, man, I just got here. I can't believe it. I was telling somebody else, oh, I just got here. So I went up to the T-shirt guy, and I was looking at some stuff, the merch guy. And his name is Danny. Hi, Danny. Hope you're watching, man, because I saw him Sunday night too, and I took a picture with him. Actually, I'll show you later, another night. But anyway, so I went up and I was like, I can't believe it. It took me so long to get in here. I've been so sick. I wanted to go down and see these guys. I've been waiting to see them. There was the lockdowns, and then their concerts got shut down because of that stuff. And this is, so he goes, so I was saying to this other guy, and this guy, Danny, goes, hey, I went up and I was like, yeah, I'll, he goes, did I hear you say you got here in like the last 30 seconds of Saturn 3? I'm like, yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah, there's nothing I could do. And he goes, were you thinking about getting that vinyl up there? It's a live double vinyl. I was like, yeah, I was. He goes, tell you what, hold on just a minute. I'll go back and get it signed by the band for you. I'm like, dude, that's so nice. That is so cool. And he did. It was very nice. So Sunday night, again, I've been very sick, and I will go on trips if I'm with someone else. But oftentimes on my own, I'm not going to go on a long trip because I don't know what might happen with my body and stuff. It's been pretty weird. So taking longer trips is a bit of a risk sometimes for me. And so I'm like, okay, am I going to go down? Am I not going to go down? How's it? But I've been feeling like a little bit of improvement and stuff. Okay, cool. This is good. And, whether it's this long COVID, or whatever, I don't know. But I was like, okay, I'm going to go down. And what I had thought about doing was taking a trip to the Brattle Bookstore, which is in a little different part of Boston, near the Orpheum Theater in the park, near Park Street, as they'd say, and change to the red line, Park Street, orange line. But they were closed on Sundays. Well, I looked up bookstores in this other area, which actually where the band was playing. They were in Cambridge at a club called the Sinclair. And it's literally like you can see Harvard Yard from at the end of the other end of the street. It's right at Harvard Square, pretty much. It's between Brattle Street and Harvard Square, if you know Brattle Street. So anyway, which is funny because the Brattle Bookstore is not on Brattle Street. The Brattle Bookstore is in downtown Boston. So, but I'm in Cambridge. I'm looking at the map, and I'm like, I wonder if there are any bookstores in Cambridge. There was a bookstore just diagonally across the street by like 100 yards from the entrance to the Sinclair Club. So I'm like, cool. Well, they close at 7. Well, I tried to make it down, and I figured I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to rush it. I'm just going to go. It'll be fine. I got there about 10 minutes after 7. It's just getting towards twilight. Beautifully warm night. I made it down. I'm like, okay, this is good. It's going to be all right. Parked my car in a parking lot that's literally right across the street from the entrance to the Sinclair. And then if you're facing the Sinclair, you're facing south. The Sinclair is over this way. The parking lot, you're in the parking lot. And then diagonal on your side of the street, and the street runs this way, is the little block where the bookstore thing is. So I walk over to the bookstore. It's just getting dark. It's dark inside. The guy's cashing out, doing some stuff. I wave to him, that sort of thing. I'm looking at the books in the window. And somebody else, it's kind of quiet. There are a few people getting ready to walk over, some people in the parking lot. It's not a massive club or anything like that. Occasional clusters of people probably doing other stuff here and there. There's a little restaurant down there, So I sent somebody walk up next to me. I look over. It's the drummer for Fu Manchu. I go, hey. He goes, hey, how you doing? I'm like, great, man. I'm going to be seeing you in a few minutes. He goes, all right, cool, dude. And I was like, yeah, last time I told him that story, he goes, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, it was really funny. And your merch guy was so nice. And he went and had it had you guys ask you if you'd sign it backstage. He goes, oh, yeah. So it was great to talk to him. He was a really nice guy. He had just gone out to get some food, and just a really, really nice guy. I spoke to him a couple times after that. After the show, he just came out. He was hanging out with people and stuff like that. And it was fun. We had such a blast. And in fact, if you look up Fu Manchu, the Sinclair, Sinclair, I don't know if there's an E on the end or not. I don't know. Can't remember, but you'll find it. September, what was the date on that? The 13th, 14th, something like that, Sunday. You'll see me in the front. I was right in the front. And you'll see me jumping, going crazy. And when it gets into that sort of situation, I know that adrenaline will be flowing through my system, and I always push it. I always push it. I try to give extra energy to the band and stuff like that. And it was great. It was so much fun. So tonight, for Fiction Friday, I want to give you a story by the man who invented the Dr. Fu Manchu character. He invented Fu Manchu. He's Sax Rohmer. And we get to hear a little something as an intro from one of my favorite bands of all time. Yo! This is them getting all warmed up. This is from Hellfest 2019, somewhere over in Europe or something like that. I can't remember. Oh, man. You got to see these guys. They're so good. They're so good. Oh, so good. Fuzzwa all the way. You know what else is great? They love Planet of the Apes. So I made a sign that said, "Go ape, go ape." And I drew a big gorilla like General Urko on it. It was great. All right, that's enough of that. So there you go. Fu Manchu, check them out. You'll love them. Now let's talk about Sax Rohmer. Yeah, some of you might recognize that because I use that in my opening, obviously. And, you know, the interesting thing is they were using strobe lights there. And I don't know if it's anybody in the band has problems with strobe lights or they just did it because they were guarding somebody that they might have known was in the audience who has problems with epileptics problems. But they said, oh, hey, can you not do the strobe lights at the concert? So right after the start of that, it doesn't flash as much. So if you want to watch it, you have problems, don't worry about it. The strobes will be away from you for a little bit there. So the good stuff from those guys. All right. So I want to talk about this Sax Rohmer character in more detail later, and we'll talk about the character of Fu Manchu later on as well. But tonight, for Fiction Friday, just to read a story, we're going to talk mysteries. And we're going to have a good old time talking mysteries from Sax Rohmer. This is from a collection called Victorian Detective Stories, edited by Michael Cox. And I think this was originally from Penn State. The person who owned it was a PhD and assistant professor of English at Penn State. Her card is inside. I could probably look her up and see if she still has an office. But I want to, there are all sorts of stories in here, ranging from Edgar Allan Poe to Charles Dickens to Wilkie Collins to, let's see, I think, Robert Barr is in here, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So lots and lots of good stuff here. But I'm going to read to you a story called The Green Spider by Sax Rohmer from 1904. So the creator of Fu Manchu, after I saw Fu Manchu on Sunday, I said, I'm pulling out some Fu Manchu vibes, baby. The insidious Dr. Fu Manchu. But he's not in this story. So here we go. This is on page 543. The Green Spider by Sax Rohmer from 1909, was it? Yeah, 1904. Wow. It's right after Arthur Conan Doyle's story, too. All righty. The Green Spider by Sax Rohmer on this Fiction Friday, my friends. I find from my notes that Professor Bramy Skepley's great lecture, which was to revolutionize modern medicine, should have been delivered upon the 15th of March, and many of Europe's leading scientists were, during the preceding week, to be seen daily in the quaint old streets of Barminster. For the entire world of medical science was waiting agog for the revelation of the Bramy Skepley treatment. Many people wondered that Bramy Skepley should deliver a lecture so vastly important in old world Barminster rather than in London. But he was not a man to be coerced. So the savants, perforce, came to Barminster. At 12 midnight, as nearly as can be ascertained, on the 14th of March, the porter in charge of the North Gate, by which direct admission can be gained to the quadrangle, was aroused by a loud ringing of his bell. Hurrying to the door of his little lodge, he was surprised to find at the gate the gaunt figure of Professor Bramy Skepley, enveloped in a huge fur coat. He hastened to unlock the wicket and admit the great scientist. "I am sorry to trouble you at so late an hour, Jameson," said the professor, "but there are some little preparations that I must make for tomorrow's lecture. I shall probably be engaged in the bacteriological laboratory for a couple of hours. You will not mind turning out the key?" He slipped a sovereign into the porter's hand as he spoke, and Jameson only too gladly acquiesced. The fire in the little sitting room of the lodge was almost extinct, but the man revived it, and, putting on a shovelful of coal, lighted his pipe and sat smoking for about an hour. At 1 o'clock he stepped outside and glanced across the quadrangle. The professor was still working, and, finding the night air chilly, Jameson was about to turn in again when a light suddenly appeared in the top window of one of those ancient houses in Spindle Lane. The house was the last of the row and overlooked the bacteriological laboratory. "That's old Cragg's house," muttered the porter, "but I didn't know anybody lived there since the old man died." The light was a vague and flickering one, almost like that of a match, and as he watched, it disappeared again. There was something uncanny about this solitary light in a house which he believed to be uninhabited. So, with a slight shudder, Jameson returned to the comforts of his fireside. Curiously enough, I had been reading upon this particular night in Harborne's rooms, and at something like 20 minutes past 2, I knocked the ashes from my pipe and was about to depart, when there came a sudden scuffling on the stairs. We both turned just as the door was flung open, and Jameson, white-faced and wild-eyed, stumbled, breathless, into the room. "Thank heaven I've found somebody up," he gasped. "Yours was the only window with a light." "Where's the brandy?" I said, for the man seemed inclined to faint upon the sofa. A stiff glass of cognac pulled him together somewhat, and, with a little color returning to his face, but still wild of eye, he burst out, "Professor Bramy Skepley has been murdered." "Murdered?" echoed Harborne. "And no moral hand has done the thing, sir," continued the frightened man. "Heaven grant I never see the like again." "Oh, sorry, I misread you. And no mortal hand has done the thing, sir," continued the frightened man. "Heaven grant I never see the like again." "You're raving," I said, with an assumption of severity, for Jameson's condition verged closely upon that of hysteria. "Try to talk sense. Where is the professor?" "In the bacteriological laboratory, sir." "How long has he been there?" "Since 12 o'clock. I glanced at Harborne in surprise. "What was he doing there?" inquired the latter. "He said he had some preparations to make for his lecture." "Well, get on. Here, have another pull at the brandy. How do you know he's dead?" "I went to ask him how much longer he was going to be." "Well, He didn't answer to my knocking, although there was a light burning. The door was locked from inside, so I got onto the dust box and just managed to reach a window ledge. I pulled myself up far enough to look inside, and then I dropped down again. What did you see, man? What did you see? I saw Professor Brain Skeppery lying dead on the floor among broken jars by an overturned table. There were only 2 lamps on, those over the table, and his head came just in the circle of light. His body was in shadow. What else? Blood, his hair, all matted. Come on, Harborne, I cried, seizing my coat. You too, Jameson. For the love of heaven, gentlemen, gasped the man, grasping us each by the arms. I couldn't. You haven't heard all. Then get on with it, said Harborne. Every second is of importance. I ran for the window ladder, gentlemen, and when I came back with it, the electric lamps were out. Out? I ran up the ladder and looking in at the window and saw... How can I tell you what I saw? Don't meander, said Hawthorne. What is it? It was a thing, like a kind of green spider, only with a body twice the size of a football. Harborne and I looked at one another significantly. You're a trifle overwrought, Jameson, I said, laying my hand upon his shoulder. Stay here until we come back. The man stared at me. You don't believe it, he said tensely, and you'll go into that place unprepared. But I'll swear on the book that there was some awful thing, not of this earth, creeping in the corner of the laboratory. Harborne, with his hand on the doorknob, turned undecidedly. Which corner, Jameson? He inquired. The northwest, sir. I just caught one glimpse of it through the opening of the partition. How could you see it since all the lights were out? Harborne asked. The porter looked surprised. That never occurred to me before. But I think it must have shown something like the bottles of phosphorus, sir. Come on, said my friend. And without further ado, we ran downstairs into the square. A cheerful beam of light from the door of the lodge cut the black shadows of the archway as we approached, and served to show that the panic-stricken porter had left the wicket open. As we hurried through and sprinted across the quadrangle, we were met by a cold, damp wind from the direction of the river. The night was intensely dark, and the bacteriological laboratory showed against the driving masses of inky cloud merely as a square patch of blackness ahead. Well, there's the ladder, said Harborne suddenly, and we both paused, undecided how to act. Try the door, I suggested. We rattled the handle of the door, but it was evidently locked. So, for a moment, we were in a quandary. Harborne mounted the ladder and peered into the impenetrable shadows of the laboratory, but reported that there was nothing to be seen. We must burst in the door, I said. It hasn't a very heavy lock. We accordingly applied our shoulders to the door and gave a vigorous push. The lock yielded perceptibly. I then crashed my heel against the woodwork just over the keyhole, and the door flew open. We immediately detected a most peculiar odor. It's the broken bottles, muttered Hawthorne. The switch is over there, against the wall by the bookcase. We must go straight for that. Cautiously, we stepped into the darkness, and at the third or fourth step there was a crackling of glass underfoot. My boot slipped where some sticky substance lay, and I gave an involuntary shudder. A moment later, I heard an exclamation of disgust. The wall is all wet, said Harborne. Then he found the electric buttons and turned on the lights in rapid succession. Heavens! How can I describe the picture revealed? Never have I witnessed such a scene of chaos, fearsome in its indications of an incredible struggle. At first glance, the place gave an impression of having been wantonly wrecked by a madman. Scarcely a jar or bottle remained upon the shelves, all being strewn in fragments upon the floor, which was simply swimming in the spilled spirits and preservatives they had contained. The door of the case that had contained the specimens of bacilli was wide open, and the glass completely smashed. The priceless contents were presumably to be sought among the 101 objects lying in the liquid on the floor. Most of the books from the shelf were distributed about the place as though they had been employed as missiles, and one huge volume was wedged up under the frosted glass of the skylight in the center of the roof. In the wood of the partition, a lancet was stuck, and a horribly suggestive streak linked it with a red pool upon the floor. A table was overturned, and 2 lamps immediately above it were broken. Of Professor Brain's Skepley there was no sign, but his hat and fur coat hung upon a hook where he had evidently placed them on entering. For some time we surveyed the scene in silence. Then Harborne spoke. "What are these marks on the wall?" he said. "They're still wet. And where is the professor?" The marks alluded to where a series of impressions in the shape of irregular rings passed from the pool on the floor to the 4 walls and up the walls to where the shadows of the lamp shades rendered it impossible to follow them any longer. I pulled down a lamp and turned the shade upwards, whereupon was revealed a thing that caused me a sudden nausea. The marks extended right to the top of the wall, and could furthermore be distinguished upon the ceiling, and on the framework of the skylight was the reddish-brown impression of a human hand. "Drop it," said Harborne huskily. "If we stay here much longer, we shall have no pluck left for looking behind the partition. The northern end of the laboratory was partitioned off to form a narrow apartment, which runs from side to side of the building. But it's only some 6 feet in width. It is lined with shelves, whereon are stored the greater part of the materials used in experiments, and it is lighted by a square window at the spindle lane end, beneath which is a sink. The partition does not run flush up to the western wall, but only to within 3 feet of it, leaving an opening connecting the storeroom with the laboratory proper. There are 2 electric lamps in the place, one over the sink and the other in the center, but they cannot be turned on from the laboratory, the switch being behind the partition. Consequently, the storeroom was in darkness, and ignorant of what awful thing might be lurking there, we yet, in justice to the missing man, had no alternative but to enter. Harborne, whose pallor can have been no greater than my own, strode quickly up the laboratory and passed through the opening in the partition. I followed closely behind. I heard the click of the electric switch, but only one lamp became lighted. That, over the sink, was the broken lamp. We were both, I think, anticipating some gruesome sight. But, singular to relate, the only abnormal circumstance that at first came under our notice was that of that broken lamp. A sudden draught of air, damp and cold, that set the other shade swinging, drew our attention to the fact that the window had been pulled right away from its fastenings and lay flat down against the wall. Then Harborne detected the gruesome tracks, ran along the center of the floor, and under the window we made a further discovery. The wall all around the casement was smeared with blood, and the marks of a clutching hand showed in all directions. "Good heavens," I muttered. "This is horrible. It looks as though he had been dragged." There was a queer catch in Harborne's voice as he answered, "We must get out a party to scour the marshes." "Hark," I said. Jameson has been knocking some of them up. Here they come across... Hark, I said. Jameson has been knocking some of them up. Here they come across the quad. A moment later, an excited group of an excited group was surveying the strange scene in the laboratory. "Clear out and get lanterns, you fellows," shouted Harborn. "His body has been dragged through the window." "But what's this about a green spider?" called several men. "Don't ask me," said my friend. "I'm inclined to agree with Jameson that this is not the doing of a man. We must spread out and examine Spindle Lane and the surrounding country until we find the professor's body." During the remainder of that never-to-be-forgotten night, a party which grew in number as the hours wore on to dawn scoured the entire countryside for miles around. Towards 5 o'clock, the rain suddenly broke over the marshes and drenched us all to the skin, so that it was so sorry a gathering that returned at daybreak to Barminster. The local police had taken charge of the laboratory, and urgent messages had been sent off to Scotland Yard. But when the London experts arrived on the scene, we had nothing more to tell them than has already been recounted. Harborn, Dr. Davidson, and myself had devoted the whole of our attention to Spindle Lane and the immediate vicinity of the mysterious crime, but our exertions were not rewarded by the smallest discovery. Such, then, were the extraordinary but inadequate data which were placed in the hands of the London investigators, and upon which they very naturally based a wholly erroneous theory. This was the condition of affairs upon the night of the 16th, when Harborn suddenly marched into my rooms and unceremoniously deposited a dripping leather case bearing the initials JBS in my fender. "Any news?" I cried, springing up. "Not likely to be," he answered. "You might also think these detectives have assumed all along that they are dealing with a case of the supernatural and have, in consequence, overlooked certain clues which, had the circumstances been less bizarre, they would have instantly followed up." "You have some theory, then? What is in this bag?" There was that in Harborn's manner which I could not altogether fathom, as he evasively replied, "Leaving the bag for a moment, let me just place the facts before you as they really are, and not as they appear to be. I must confess that last night I was more than half inclined to agree with the detectives, and it is eminently probable that but for one thing I should now be in complete agreement with the other investigators, who, of course, believe that some huge and unknown insect entered the laboratory and bore away the professor. When I left you and Dr. Davidson yesterday morning, I immediately went in search of Jameson and found him 3 parts intoxicated. As you have probably heard, he has since become wholly so, and the detectives have utterly failed to extract a sane word from him. In this respect, therefore, I was first in the field, and from him I obtained the one additional clue needed. About 1 a.m., an hour after Brame Skepley had entered the laboratory, Jameson came to the door of his lodge and saw a light in the end house of Spindle Lane. But surely the police have questioned all the tenants in Spindle Lane. The end house is empty. Have they examined it? Certainly, but they merely did so as a matter of form. They had no particular reason for doing so. As a result, they found nothing. What there was to find, I had found before their arrival on the scene. I'm afraid I don't altogether follow. Wait 1 minute. When I extracted from the porter the fact that he had seen a light in this house, the entire affair immediately assumed a different aspect. The key to the mystery was in my hands. I went round into Spindle Lane and surveyed the end house from the front. It was evidently empty, for the ground floor windows were almost without glass. As I did not want to take anyone into my confidence at this stage of the proceedings, it was impractical to apply for the key, But upon passing round to the north, I found that there was a back door with 3 stone steps leading up from the water's edge. I looked about for some means of gaining these steps, for I did not wish to excite attention by getting out a college boat. In the end, I jumped for it. I got off badly from the muddy ground, for the rain was coming down in torrents, but nonetheless, I landed on the bottom step, off which I promptly shot into the river. As I was already drenched to the skin, this mattered little, and, notwithstanding my condition, a thrill of gratification warmed me on finding the door to be merely latched. It warmed me to find the door merely latched. Just as a party of 6, which had been scouring the East Valley, appeared upon the opposite bank, I entered, and I shut the door behind me. Well, what then? I went up to the room overlooking the laboratory, for although no one seems to have attached any particular importance to the circumstance, from the window of this room you could, if the laboratory window were bigger, easily spring through. What did you find there? The origin of the mysterious light, which was a match. Now, you will agree with me that green spiders do not use matches. Inference that some human being had been in the room on the night of the murder and had struck a match, which had been observed by Jameson. There were also certain marks which considerably mystified me at first. On the thick grime of the window ledge inside, it was evident that a board had rested. That is to say, a board had been, for some reason, placed across the room. The mortar had fallen off the wall in one corner, and here I found on the floor an impression as though a box had stood on end there, evidently to support the other extremity of the board. My next discovery was even more interesting. I found traces of finger marks, which, by the way, I removed before leaving, on the sill and around the inside of the window frame. Someone had come in by the window. But I remembered that until I opened it to investigate, the window had been closed. Therefore, the mysterious visitor had closed it behind him. Since his blood-stained finger marks testified to the state of his hands on entering, how had he opened the window from outside? A somewhat difficult operation, and yet left no traces upon the sash, for there were none. I assumed, by way of argument, that he had opened the window from the inside. I had now constructed a hypothetical assassin who had got into the end house on Spindle Lane, entered the bacteriological laboratory, murdered the professor, returned through the window, and struck a match, for there were traces of blood upon the match. Why had he come back to the room, and by what means had he reached the window of the laboratory? It was upon subsequently examining the laboratory, for the local officer in charge, being an acquaintance, raised no objection to my doing so, that 2 points became clear. First, that the window could never have been opened from inside. Second, the probability that a plank had been placed across, the same plank that had been used for some other mysterious purpose, came to mind. Working then upon this theory, it immediately became evident that a plank could only have been placed in position from one of the windows. Here I had an enlightening inspiration. My assassin must have entered the house from the riverside, as I had done. How had he conveyed the plank into the place? By a boat. You will mark that was all pure supposition, of course. Nevertheless, I determined for this moment to assume that a plank had been used. It was with this idea before me that I made my examination of the laboratory, and the various facts viewed in this new light began to assume their proper places. The horrible marks, suggestive of an incredible assailant, which so horrified us when we first observed them, were, of course, less inexplicable when regarded as intentional and not accidental. Oh, pardon me. I'm having a visit from the co-pilot. Hello, co-pilot. How are you? Hello. How are you, co-pilot? Yes, she's very interested in these marks and this relationship between these two buildings. There you go, co-pilot. There you go. Okay. That's pretty good. All right. Okay. To give her some more in a second, I'm sure. How you doing there, buddy? Okay. We got to get that cat cam. All right. Continuing. And there. Okay. They were not accidentals. To consider the hand mark upon the ceiling, for example, is incidental to a struggle for life. Pointed to consider the hand mark upon the ceiling, for example, as incidental to a struggle for life, pointed to an opponent possessing attributes usually associated with insects. But it was the easiest thing in the world for a tall man standing upon a table to imprint such a mark. This startling revelation, taken in conjunction with the locked door and the impossibility of anyone entering the place from the quadrangle, brought me face to face with a plausible solution of the mystery. The elaborate nature of the affair pointed to predetermination, and the fact that the missing man had locked the door was most significant. Who could have known that he would be there upon this particular night, and why had he failed to unlock the door? For you will remember that the key was in the lock. Then again, how did it come about that his cries for assistance did not arouse the people living in Spindle Lane? These ideas carried me to the second stage of my theory, and I assumed that a plank had been placed in position for the purpose of exit from and not entrance to the laboratory. My final conclusion was as follows. Professor Brahms Skepley entered the end house of Spindle Lane from a boat, which he obtained at Long's boathouse, bearing a plank and some kind of box or case. The plank he placed from window to window, the case upon the floor of the house of the lane. He then returned to his boat and landed beside the house. Entering the quadrangle, as we know, he went into the laboratory and locked the door. His next proceeding was to smash everything breakable, wrench the window from its fastenings, and imprint the weird tracks and marks which proves so misleading. The book beneath the skylight and the lancet in the woodwork were the artistic touches of a man of genius. By this time, it was close upon 1 o'clock, and desirous of ascertaining whether his apparatus for bringing about the spider illusion was ready for instant use, he crawled from the window to the other window. It was his match that Jameson saw, his match that he saw from the lodge window, and Jameson had Jameson been a man of metal, the whole plot would have failed. He then probably grew very impatient whilst awaiting the coming of Jameson, but he heard him ultimately and lay in the light of the lamps, as we have heard. All fell out as he had planned. Jameson climbed onto the dustbox and looked into the laboratory. Then he ran for the window ladder, as a reasoned mind would have easily foreseen that he would do. The professor, during his absence, broke the lamps, climbed along his plank, and pulled it after him. I had listened with breathless interest so far, but I now broke in. What about the spider? Perfectly simple, answered Harborne. Allow me. He reached down for the leather case and unstrapped it. From within he took a magic lantern. What? I exclaimed. A magic lantern? With cinematograph attachment. Here, you see, is the film. Not improved by having been in the river, of course. Some kind of South American spider, is it not? Beautifully colored and on a black background. The plank supported upon the window ledge and upturned. The case was there, and, of course, it did duty for a table. And as Jameson went up the ladder and surveyed the place from the southeast, this was directed from the window of the end house across the few intervening yards of Spindle Lane and through the open laboratory window onto the northwest corner of the wall. The beam from the lens would be hidden by the partition, and only the weird image visible from the porter's point of view. Though he had mounted further up the ladder and glanced over the wall, he must have observed the ray of light across the lane. The familiar illuminated circle, usually associated with such demonstrations, was ingeniously eliminated by having a transparent photograph on an opaque ground. The professor then retreated to the back door and hauled up his boat by the painter, which he would, of course, have attached there. He pulled upstream to return his boat and sink his apparatus. He was probably already disguised. His fur coat would have concealed this from Jameson. I stared at Harborne in very considerable amazement. "You are apparently surprised," he said with a smile, "but there is really nothing very remarkable in it at all. I have not bored you with all the little details that led to the conclusion, nor related how I suffered a second ducking in leaving the end house, but my solution was no more than a plausible hypothesis until a happy inspiration, born of nothing palpable except my own imaginings, which led me to search for a kind of cinematograph, and I found it. You are about to ask where. I answer, in the deep hole above Long's boathouse, where Jimmy Baker made his big catch last summer. Brain Skepley, being a man of very high reasoning powers, would, I argued, deposit it up and not downstream, knowing that the river would be dragged in that direction. He would therefore put it in that hole, most likely, that he had heard about after the fish catch, so that the current should not carry it below the college. There are, however, still one or two points that need clearing up. As to the blood, that offered no insurmountable difficulty to a physiologist. And, of course, by Jove, he suddenly plunged his hand into the case. This rubber ring from a soda water bottle, ingeniously mounted upon a cane handle, accounts for the mysterious tracks. The point to which I particularly allude is the object of the professor's disappearance. I think I said that I can offer a suggestion. He found too late to withdraw that his famous theory had a flaw in it, and could devise no less elaborate means of hiding the fact, and at the same time of so destroying his apparatus as to leave no trace whereby his great reputation could be marred. That is my own idea as well, agreed Harborne, for which reason I have carefully covered very few tracks, all as he left, and have decided that this handsome case, with all its telltale inscription, JBS, must be destroyed. My conclusions are not for the world, which is at perfect liberty to believe that Professor Brain Skepley was carried off by an unclassified aptera. And so, somewhere or other, Professor Brain Skepley is pursuing his distinguished career under a new name, while Harborne allows the world to persist in its mistaken opinion. Okay, Sax Rohmer with the green spider. Sax Rohmer, the creator of the insidious Dr. Fu Manchu, and the co-pilot has left. She left the building. So that's okay. That's all right. I thought it's all right. I wonder what you thought of it. I think it was pretty easy to figure out. Usually those old-timey things from the turn of the century are pretty easy to figure out. That actually reminded me of a Holmes story, one of the Sherlock Holmes story. Yeah. Let's see what we've got inside Rumble Land. I might read another one on Monday, just for the heck of it, and scout out something really powerful. Make up for that. Let's see. Because I misread a couple things there, so kind of screwed it up. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm curious now. Have you? I wonder if any of you have ever read. Let's see. First of all, I have to ask if you like Sherlock Holmes. I like Sherlock Holmes a lot, but I wonder if you've ever read, what's it called? It's Arthur Conan Doyle is the main character in it, and there's a sequel called The Six Messiahs. It's by Mark. Uh, is it Mark Snow? He's like co-creator of Twin Peaks. Yeah, I can't remember. I'll have to see if I can find that over at like Fantastic Fiction or something like that. Oh, thanks, Pigeonverse. Very cool. Taylor Saunders says Jeremy Brett was the best Sherlock Holmes. I agree. What a team they were, huh? They were great. They were phenomenal. Just excellent. Yeah, Jeremy Brett was awesome. I also like Peter Cushing as Holmes. That was excellent. And sometimes it was interesting. In the Hound of the Baskervilles film, Christopher Lee played Holmes, and now his shape isn't as aquiline or avian, I should say, as the Holmes look from the original drawings, but he's very tall, and Holmes is very tall. I think Christopher Lee was like 6'4", 6'5". And he's very good as Holmes in Hound of the Baskervilles. Very good. There are a number of people have written like pastiche sequels to the Hound of the Baskervilles. I think the best one it's actually called The Return of the Hound. I have it in hardcover. And if you get a chance, Nicholas Meyer, he wrote The 7% Solution. He's also the guy who wrote Wrath of Khan. And curiously enough, he didn't even know Star Trek when he tried to get the job to write Wrath of Khan. So he had to quickly go through a bunch of Star Trek stuff, and but he's written a bunch of them since then that are all very, very good. They're real good Sherlock Holmes stories. I also have a series of Holmes stories, not to switch over to Holmes stuff, of Holmes in the United States, Holmes in the Orient. So they try to fit things in during the period when he had fallen from the Reichenbach Falls and where he might have been and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. And of course, other people write alternatives that are based on like Moriarty, and Moriarty's actually a hero and he's like misunderstood and that sort of thing. Or you got to root for the bad guy, that sort of thing. So very interesting stuff that people do. The worst, I will let you know, whatever you do, do not read. There's a book called The Last Sherlock Holmes Story. Let me see if I can call it up on Fantastic Fiction. It's awful. And I actually threw it out. Let me see if I can find it on Fantastic Fiction. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Michael Dibdin. This is an utter insult to anybody who likes Sherlock Holmes. Whatever you do, not only don't read it, tell other people not to read it. And I don't want this to be like the Streisand effect. This book is awful. And just to let you know, Conan Doyle allowed a lot of people to use Sherlock Holmes. And Sherlock Holmes became very popular while Doyle was alive in theatrical productions, especially New York. And there was one writer who picked up the Sherlock Holmes things and did a lot of those plays in New York. And he would write to Conan Doyle. And he said, "Is it okay if I have Sherlock Holmes get married?" He said, "Sure, marry him, kill him, do anything you want to him, So it's like, okay, fine. What this guy does in this last Sherlock Holmes story novel, it's a fairly short novel, is not anything that the Conan Doyle estate or any fan who respects what Arthur Conan Doyle did would ever do to Sherlock Holmes. It is repulsive what he did to Sherlock Holmes in this book. And it has nothing to do with sexual stuff or drug stuff or really or any of that. It's just I'm not even going to tell you. It's just awful. It's so awful. And the key thing about Conan Doyle is like, do whatever you want to the character. Don't change the character. And that's what this guy did. And he changed him in such a way to make Holmes utterly despicable. And you just sit there, you're like, why would you do that? It's terrible. literally next to I Am the Cheese, probably one of the worst books I've ever opened up. I didn't finish it. I left it in a hotel in England in the trash can at a Doctor Who convention. I threw it away. I didn't even want to leave it for the people in the hotel to pick up. I was like, I don't want anybody to read this book. This is the worst. And if I ever meet that guy Dibdin, I'm going to ask him, like, what the heck were you thinking, dude? I mean, just utter contempt for all of that work from Conan Doyle. And that's the kind of thing I can't stomach that. You know, if you got somebody who did a bunch of really good work and other people tried to support a piece of work, whatever it is, music, movies, art, whatever, and then you have somebody comes in and just spits all over it and does whatever he wants, no. Make something up, man. Do it yourself. It's just amazing. All right, so I thought that was okay. That was a fairly formulaic story. So we've had 2 of the past 3 that I've read the past 2 weeks. I've been sort of like, but we'll try one Monday. I'll do one Monday, a real quick one for you, and it'll be a real good one. The one that I really think is the real good one is Where There's a Will. That was excellent. That was really good. And I liked Callahan's Coat last week. I thought that was pretty good too, by Don Burleson. But the real standout is Where There's a Will by Richard Matheson and Richard Christian Matheson. That was really good 2 weeks ago. That was great. So I'll leave it with that. I'm going to go get some Din Din. And let's see. We got MOE is in there. And Taylor Saunders. Yeah, I know, Taylor. That's the thing. I mention it. And this is one that I really hope people will just remember. This guy Dibdin, just... even if you're tempted, don't do it. It is an utter insult. It will infuriate you. Like, there are very few things that really, really get me angry. I got really, really angry when I saw what he did. I can't even tell you what an insult it is. It's like one of the worst insults in the history of literature, what this guy did. And I know that even that amps it up even more. It was absolutely distasteful. The worst thing you could possibly think of. Well, one of the worst things. Just think of that time period, okay? And think about some of the things that were going on in Whitechapel. That'll give you a hint. And the other thing about it was I knew what it was. Within the first page, I knew exactly what he was going to do. Like, if you do see it, if you get it, don't buy it. Whatever you do, don't buy it. If you get it out of the library or something, if you do look at it, you'll know too. Because it has one of Watson's introductions in it. You know, and the minute you see it, you're like, oh, I know what he's going to do. And it was utterly predictable. That's the other thing. It was like no effort at all to the whole thing. It's like, why even do it? Dude, the minute anybody with a brain cell opens up that book, they know what you're going to be doing to this guy, Sherlock Holmes. Just infuriating. Yeah. Taylor says, I would prefer the stories only Conan Doyle did. There are some really good ones. Like if you go with the ones that, Nicholas Meyer did, those are really, really good. And then occasionally there's, a pastiche story here and there. Like my friend Guy Adams has written some. My friend Kevin Scott has written some. You'll find those. Those are in the Titan Books series that you find in the bookstores and stuff like that. They have really cool covers. And they've added supernatural elements to those too. So, Cavan and Guy have a real affinity for the rhythm. They're both British guys. And in fact, Guy read one of the scenes of his, and Guy comes from a theatrical. He was an actor. And it was just like, you could see the whole thing playing out in front of you. It's like watching a movie. He was great. He did all the voices. He was phenomenal. Guy Adams. Great, great stuff. All right, I better go. Have a great night, everybody. Don't forget, you can find the audios over at the Substack. If you want to contribute over there through PayPal, the link will be there. You can sign up at Substack and get the news notes every Monday through Friday. And that's cool if you want to, be a paid subscriber. You can always contribute at Rumble. And my post office box is also inside the post for the audios as well. And then pretty soon I'll get signed up for one of those things like Zelle or Cash App or something like that. So that's always something you can do as well. So have a great night. And I might wait to release this one as, Fiction Friday. I'll watch it and see if I think the story holds, and if not, maybe I'll like read another story Monday and release that, and just put that out instead on Tuesday for fiction, the fiction story to go out for people to listen to in their cars and stuff. So we'll see. Yeah. So, okay. Have an awesome night. I'm going to hit the road. I'm going to get some din. And then tomorrow I got to go shopping for food because I haven't even had time. I've been so busy just collecting the news stories. I remember David and I was like, I haven't left the house in X number of days. I've just been working so hard. This is like last year. But I'm going to hit the road. I'll leave you with a little something from Outer Limits, of course, our outro, as we now turn control back to you. The control voice outro for the Outer Limits. Have a great night. God bless. And we'll see you for Nights of the Storm and America Unplugged at noontime. Nights of the Storm at 2 o'clock on Rumble. Take care, everybody. See ya.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.